What is up, Mob Psycho fans? Simon here. Welcome to HannaTalk. Hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic, even though it is drizzling outside. As I said before many times in the past, as Neil Finn from Crowded House once said, 4 seasons in one day, welcome to Melbourne. But today I'm here with a very special guest. Now, he is an actor who is best known to fans as Shigeru Kageyama from Mob Psycho 100, but he's also played across series such as Mobile Suit Gundam, Fate Stay Night, Your Lie in April, Blame, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Cyborg 009, The Seven Deadly Sins, but he's also played across games such as Nier, Disgaea, Fire Emblem, Harry Potter Wizards Unite, and so much more. Please welcome Kyle McCarley.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Very, very happy to have you along with us, Kyle. How are you?
I'm good. I just got done with a remote I had two remote sessions today, so yeah, it's been a busy day.
I can imagine. And because obviously during this time with what's happening with the pandemic, how have you been keeping things up, especially on the acting side of things?
Life has obviously changed a little bit, but the especially the dubbing stuff, the anime and live action foreign dubbing, that industry somehow miraculously adapted very, very quickly. So we kind of there was about a week of total stoppage, and then everything kind of started picking back up again. There's definitely been a slowdown in terms of how much I've been working, but I have still been able to work from home, which is it's great. There's been some technological hurdles, but so far we're making it happen. And as time wears on and there's still not really an end in sight, more and more stuff is starting to pick back up and figure things out in terms of a remote setup. So today I just had my first original animation recording session. I've worked on a couple video games. My wife, Caitlin Galt, who is also a voice actor, has been working on a lot of commercial stuff lately. So it's been we went through some growing pains, and we're still going through those growing pains. But things are still trucking along, and we're still able to work, which is great.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. Now let's get started with the beginning of your career. How did you get started in acting?
Gosh, you got to go back a real long way before. So I was probably I don't even remember when the impetus struck me that being an actor was what I wanted to do, but it's basically been with me ever since I was a wee child. I mean, when you're little, you kind of want to be everything. I wanted to be a baseball player for a short period of time, and a firefighter, and an astronaut, and an actor. But as I grew up, all those other things kind of fell off the list, and acting always stayed. And as I grew up and I went to school and studied acting at the University of Southern California School of Theater, I kind of fell out of love with being on camera and being on stage, but due to due to a little hobby that I got involved in when I was in college, which was a little fan made me-made radio play within the World of Warcraft universe. I kind of had an epiphany at some point after graduating from college, going, you know what, that radio play was a lot of fun. Maybe I should go take a class in voiceover and see what that's all about, because I'm not really trying all that hard at being an actor anymore in general. And so I took a class in voice acting, and I fell absolutely in love, and I just decided, you know what, this is what I'm going to focus on. I'm not going to worry about any other type of acting. I'm just going to do voice acting, and I've been doing it ever since.
Fantastic. And that's really interesting about how you mentioned about how you once got started within like on-camera work, within live action work, but then you slowly start transitioning over to the voiceover side of it, and you've been doing that ever since. Because mostly a lot of voice actors tend to push themselves, who've started a lot in on-camera work, have still continued to do like live performances and such, but there are also some voice actors that have purely just stuck within the world of voiceover work, which is is truly extraordinary. But
It
would
just varies. I know, like, there is something about certainly theater that getting that live response from the audience that I do miss every now and then. But there are so many things about voice acting that are just, it's just instant gratification in so many ways, and lets you play outside of your little box a little bit more. The box for that you fit in for voice roles is a little bigger than the box that you fit in for theater roles, which is a little bigger than the box that you fit in for on-camera roles. So there's just, it just depends on what you're doing it for, and what's important to you, and really at the end of the day what brings you joy. And I just found that voice acting brought me a lot more of it, so I stuck with it.
fantastic. And who would you consider to be your influences?
I would, gosh, there are so many. I would look to Rob Paulson and Maurice LaMarche and Jim Cummings and Frank Welker and that kind of era of voice actors who are all still working, but they came long before me, and so I definitely look up to those guys. Definitely a bucket list item is to work with those people in some capacity.
Fantastic.
But yeah, there's a long list of peers and role models that I look at, and I feel like there's a little something to be learned from everybody. One actor that I like to bring up, partially to humiliate him if he ever hears me talking about him, but also just because I genuinely mean it, is an actor by the name of Ben Diskin,
Yes.
who I've worked on a lot of stuff alongside Ben. I don't think we've ever had the privilege of doing a group record session together, because those are somewhat rare these days, unfortunately. But we have worked on a lot of the same projects, and especially when it comes to anime, occasionally you will hear something that another actor has recorded already, because you hear it played back for you if it happens to be close to whatever it is you're working on. And then sometimes I go back and I watch stuff afterwards, and Ben is one of few actors who I feel like all of us that have managed to make it, as it were, or break into this industry, we have a skill set that's we there are moments that we get performing where we go, ooh, where me as an audience member can watch it, can hear it played back and go, ooh, that's really good. And Ben Diskin, I think, is one of the few actors who I get that feeling with every single line I hear come out of his mouth. It doesn't matter how trivial it is. I get that feeling of just like, wow, he really brought it on that one. On that, just like, huh? Just a little tiny thing. He's so good, and he's very humble to boot, and so I really respect and admire him, for sure.
Fantastic. And it's funny that you mentioned about with Ben Diskin, because I did an interview with him a few years back, and he is definitely one of those types of actors that has, I think, mostly been known within the Western animation side of things, but also hearing about the stuff that he's done in anime as well. And he's truly a remarkable actor and remarkable human being. Which, if you're listening to this, Ben, shout out to you, mate, because you are fantastic.
I'll be talking to him later tonight, actually. We've got a little kind of union meeting type thing going on. So.
Fantastic. And talking about the variety of roles that you've done, do you walk into like a series or a project expecting to play like a certain role, or is it like walking up to a Jack in the Box, not knowing what's gonna pop out?
Oh, it's definitely more the latter. There's, there's the vast majority of work comes from having auditioned for it, probably in some capacity. Although there are cases certainly where I get cast in something that I did not read for and I know nothing about before I walk in. But most of the time I have at least seen some stuff in terms of like a little bit of a script or a little bit of a reference video if I'm lucky for a dub or something like that. But a lot of times I'm getting cast as something that I did not audition for, even if I auditioned for that project. So I'll audition for one of the lead roles or something, and then they end up casting me to play a bunch of little incidental characters that pop up in the background. And it's always just a roll of the dice with the vast majority of the stuff I do. I'm walking in knowing next to nothing, if not absolutely nothing, and relying on the expertise of the person that's sitting in the director's chair to fill me in on what's going on and what character or characters I am playing that particular moment.
Right. And across your career, have you ever turned down a role for any particular reason?
Yes. Yes, I have. Uh, Generally, not very often. We certainly, actors, we do appreciate work. But the biggest reason to turn down work is if they're not paying a fair rate, typically. I've turned down a couple of opportunities that have come up, generally just audition opportunities. I don't think I ever got to the stage of, hey, we want to hire you for this, where they are recasting an actor, and I don't feel comfortable taking over. It depends on, because I've also replaced actors before, but it depends on what the reasoning is in terms of my level of comfort with an arrangement like that. If it's because an actor left town and we're recording things in Los Angeles, there's that seems like a fair reason to me. But if it's something like the actor was asking for a rate increase because they've been on the show for 10 years at this point, or if it's a union job that switches to go non-union, or and they're trying to bully the existing cast or something like that. If it's a situation where the actor is losing a job that I feel like they have a right to, I don't want to take it away from them. But if it's like creative differences, it's like, hey, we've decided we want to go in a different direction with the character, then I mean, there's not much that can be done about that. That stuff happens. So that's one reason. And then there has been, not really with the kind of work that you're interviewing me about, but there was one audiobook early on in my career that I was asked to, because I did a lot of audiobooks for a while, and there was one chance to do an audiobook that they said had some adult content in it, and I was like, well, I don't mind a little adult content if it serves a good story. Let me preview the book. And then I read through it and I went, oh, this is just smut. This is nothing but erotica. No, I'm not doing this.
Right, because typically that's what happens with like a lot of actors, is they typically tend to turn down. I've noticed this across with a lot of actors, is that they specifically like turn down roles, like especially in a lot of anime projects, where they go slightly left of center in terms of the story and in terms of the subject matter that they're going into. Just going like, nope, not doing that. Just because they want to stick true to their beliefs, and they go like, I just want to sleep at night. I don't want to have to wake up like with nightmares every single night from that one role that I did. I've seen that across with a variety of actors. In fact, I think Funimation, I think at one point had turned down, I think, to dub a series because it was completely against like what Funimation is best known for. Because typically, I think when you think of series dubbed by Funimation, I think as a company is best known for bringing anime that's to general audiences, for the matter. Like the biggest ones that come to my head has been Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, One Piece, and all those types of series. So strictly like anime that's like going towards a more general audience, for that matter. Whereas on the opposite end of that, you have like Sentai, which did dubs like anime like Evangelion, for example, which is very adult, very intense subject matter that's more towards that kind of audience. So
Well, when you're talking at a corporate level, there's a whole host of other things that come in. But in terms of at an actor's level, for the most part, we just want to work.
that's a good attitude to have. And now speaking about, of course, like with many anime series, now as many people will know, and as many actors will know, that anime is based 90% of anime is typically based on a manga series. Have you ever read the manga for any anime series that you've worked on, or ever become familiar or heard of a project or a franchise before you started working on that series?
Um, the best example of that would be Mobile Suit Gundam Iron Blooded Orphans, because when I was a kid, I watched Toonami when it was an after school block, which I don't know if that means anything to you there in Australia, but in America we had a little after school block on Cartoon Network where we could watch anime that had been dubbed into English, and my favorite top of the list from back in those days was Gundam Wing, and so I got big into that. And then when the auditions came around for Iron Blooded Orphans, at that point in my career, I had a couple decent sized roles in some anime projects, but I was not booking I hadn't booked any lead characters in anything that anybody really cared about. At least not main lead characters. Like a couple supporting roles here and there, or ensemble characters, or whatever. So I remember when the auditions for Iron Blooded Orphans came out, I went, "Oh, it would be so cool to be in a Gundam show. I don't care what I get. Just give me like Soldier 7A and let me walk in and say, "Hey, you stop there and die." Like, I don't care. I just wanna be in it.
Right.
And then I got the news that I was playing Mikazuki August, and I screamed a little bit because I was so excited. So that's the best example of that. I personally, I am not I don't consider myself an anime fan because there is so very much of it, and I have seen very, very little of it. I've certainly seen a lot more of it since I started working within that industry, but I had not seen much prior to that. And I've gotten to the point now where I try to make it a point not to get too familiar with stuff before an audition comes around, because well, I can go into this story too. So I when the auditions came out for Mob Psycho 100, I thought, you know what? I'm actually going to do some research on this one before I do the audition. So I think I just watched the first episode of the show, and I was like, "Ooh, this is cool. It's like One Punch Man, but a little bit different." Oh, sorry about that. My dog's barking in the background. So it's like One Punch Man, but a little bit different. But yeah, it would be really cool to be part of another, whatever the next One Punch is, or something like that. So I got really attached to it, really excited. I read for, I think, 4 different characters. I think it was Mob, Ritsu, blonde guy with the really tall hair. Why can't I remember his name? Eric Kimmerer plays him. I don't know why I can't remember his name right now. Teru? Maybe?
Maybe.
Anyway. And Reigen Arataka. I read for all 4 of those characters. And I lucked out, and I got cast as Mob, and I was like, sweet, I'm in this show, and it's gonna be great. And then a little while later, the auditions for Hanna came around, which I got really excited because it was the same script adapter / director as Your Lie in April, which I got to work. I had the privilege of working on. Patrick Seitz was the writer-director on both of those projects, and Your Lie in April was like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It was so good, so heartwarming, such a great show. I highly recommend checking that out if you haven't already. So I got really excited just from that much alone, just knowing that Patrick was attached to it. And then I went and watched the first episode because I was like, hey, this worked for me on Mob. So I watched the first episode of Anno Hanna, and I was like, oh man, this is a lot like Your Lie. This would be so cool to be part of this. So I got really attached. I think I read for only 2 different characters on that one, and I got called back for in-person callback auditions for both of those characters.
Wow.
And I did not end up booking either one of them. And then I went, oh, that hurts. That's why you don't get attached before you're cast. So now I kind of try not to research the material too much beforehand, because I don't want to get too excited.
Right. Well, actually, just before going into talking about that a little bit more, it's funny that you mentioned about like when they did Mobile Suit Gundam and the Gundam series, how you spoke about them doing like after school kind of airings for that. That's actually the same thing in Australia. At least back when I was growing up, they used to do a lot of after school airings of the Gundam series. I think when they had Adult Swim at the time. So it was so it was very similar to your experience in that fact, which is fantastic. And it's funny that you mentioned about...
I think it only lasted for, I want to say 5, maybe 6 years, if that. But there was a time when, just a hot second there, where afternoon, early evening was anime on Cartoon Network in America. And now it's all been relegated to the super late Saturday night slot.
That's definitely true, and it's interesting about how you mentioned about, of course, with now not trying to read ahead into or research the projects in that you're planning to work on or you're planning to like audition for, because there are definitely some actors I've interviewed in the past, like Amber Lee Connors, Aaron Roberts, who basically are huge fans of like the anime universe and manga universe. And they go into such great detail about reading the manga and getting inside the head of these characters well before they even start working on the series. I think Aaron Roberts said to me once that I read the project, I read the manga, I watch the anime, I go deep into that. I go into reading the full script for this the best I can, because I want to give off the best dub performance that I possibly can do. Even though it's still dubbing, I want to give off the best performance that I possibly can do. Whereas on the opposite end of that, you have, I think it was with an interview I did with Joshua Seth, where he said the one bit of advice that he got from one actor that said to him, "Don't read ahead." So
I mean, we work especially as voice actors. You have to be really good at cold reading, giving off a great performance without really knowing what's coming next. Just because of the nature of the industry, it helps to be able to. I think it helps to be able to research whatever you can before you go in, but so often you don't have that luxury. You don't. Sometimes I don't know what project I'm working on until I get there. Sometimes I don't even know the actual title of the project until it comes out. It just depends on how tight-lipped they are with their non-disclosure agreements and stuff.
Absolutely.
But now I went into a whole diatribe about not getting too attached to stuff before auditioning for a project. In terms of by the time I book it, I try to, with the stuff that I'm a leading role in, I don't always have the time, but I try to go through and watch the anime subtitled, if it's available, ahead of time. Because that's another thing, is that with the dawn of streaming platforms and stuff, a whole lot of the content that we're cranking out, we're doing it at the same time, or just slightly behind Japan's production timeline, so it's not available at a consumer level for us to go and watch it first.
Right. But that's interesting about how you mentioned that, because that also reminds me of a story, I think, with Michael Keaton, when he was talking about, I think, the role of Batman when he was doing the Tim Burton Batman movies, and I think also when he was cast as the Vulture in Spider-Man Homecoming, where people had asked him, did you go back and read through any specific Spider-Man or Batman comics when you were doing those roles? And he said, nope, I didn't. I just basically based my performance off on other characters that I knew, and that was it. And just trusting Tim Burton and John Watts' direction to give that to
Mm-hmm.
me. So so it's kind of a very similar kind of.
It's just different approaches, because I know some actors who deliberately don't go and research anything because they want to be in the moment
Mm,
when it comes up in the script, when they're recording. It just depends on your approach,
I
I
get
think.
absolutely. That's definitely true. Now, talking about like obviously going into your most well-known roles here, what was like your first voiceover role, whether it was like as a supporting role or whether it was like a major role?
Oh, very first voiceover role in general. Um, Gosh, I can't even remember what it was. It was some goofy little. I think it was a web cartoon, maybe. I don't even know if it ever came out. Something that I booked that probably paid me about $50 for for an hour's worth of work or something like that. I don't remember. I honestly don't remember. The first role that I had in an anime, I can tell you, was Nagiasu, or A Lull in the Sea. I played the character Egawa. That was the first time that was kind of the big springboard moment in my career, was booking that job, because that then led to Aoba in Durarara X2, and that was when people started to kind of know who I was. Up until that point, I had done a lot of other voiceover work outside of uh, anime and video games and things like that. It was a lot of audiobooks and a lot of little indie games and things like that, but not stuff that the general public knew anything about. It wasn't stuff that when it came up in conversation what I did for a living, and somebody asked, "Well, have you done anything I would have heard of?" My answer was always like, "No." But but after A Lull in the Sea led to Durarara, uh, then all of a sudden the floodgates kind of started to open up, and I started reaching a level where people kind of knew what, like, they'd heard of the projects I was working on all of a sudden.
Right, fantastic. Now talking about, of course, with your best known role was obviously from Mob Psycho 100 as and I apologize if I mispronounced this name here, Shigeo Kageyama. What was it like playing that character and in the series?
Um, I don't know if I'd say that it's my best known role. Honestly, I definitely get a lot more attention from 9S in Near Automata and probably my other video game stuff. But in terms of anime, it might be my biggest anime role, or best known anime role anyway. But it was great. I loved being part of Mob Psycho 100. It's such a funny show, and it's got so much heart. Um, the characters are so well developed, and Mob is so much fun to play because he's so pure and innocent and strong enough to probably blow up the entire world if he had the desire to do so, but of course he doesn't, because he's so very, very sweet. And he's so easy to empathize with. And you just kind of want to, you kind of want to just cuddle up with him and be like, hey, it's okay, little buddy. And it's so much fun going through his journey and experiencing how he learns to deal with relationships with other humans. At the start of the whole series, he basically doesn't have any friends except for this weird kind of con artisty father figure who like, you're not really sure what his motivations are at the beginning of the whole thing, like if he actually cares about Mob or not. And then you kind of go through this whole arc, and by the end of season 2, it's all about Mob, or Shigeo, caring about all of his friends, because he's come to know so many people and care for so many of them, and it's a really, really poignant storytelling with a whole lot of comedy, and ridiculous outrageousness, and I think it's a beautiful blend.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And that's also really funny about how you mentioned about like describing Mob Psycho 100 as like as almost like the next One Punch Man in a way. Because when I was looking at the design, at the design of your character, I the first thing that popped up into my head was One Punch Man, just because he looked very similar to Saitama, which was absolutely crazy.
It's the same creator, and it's they're both from One, who he created both the mangas, and
Aha.
but I definitely I feel like Mob Psycho 100 has it has a lot of the same comedy as One Punch, but while One Punch is a parody of basically all pop culture, but especially anime action series, Mob is an action comedy that does not make fun of itself. It's not a parody of the genre that it's set in. It is that genre that just has a lot of funny in it. And I feel like One Punch Man is super outrageous and outlandish and very, very funny, and Mob is a little bit less outrageous, a little bit less outlandish, and it adds in a little bit of, I think, a little bit more heart than just slapstick comedy. So they're a little bit different from each other. They're both great shows, but they're a little bit different.
I can definitely see that in that perspective because I honestly have thought of One Punch Man as being like the Deadpool of the anime universe, just the guy just to take the absolute piss out of action anime, just in general, and making fun of a lot of the tropes that we see in a lot of action-styled anime. So that's truly extraordinary. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Now, you've also played across various other projects from other long-running franchises, as mentioned about, of course, with Mobile Suit Gundam, but you also played across in series such as the Fate Stay series, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Cyborg 009, and the Seven Deadly Sins. What was it like playing across those series?
I mean, anytime I get to go into work is a good day. The Fate series in particular has become kind of a big part of my career at this point. It was playing Shinji Mato in Unlimited Blade Works in the Unlimited Blade Works series was one of my earliest anime credits. And since that time, I've gotten to reprise the role in a couple of other installments in the Fate Stay franchise, and I've also had the opportunity of doing the script adaptation for Heaven's Feel Part 2. So I've come to learn. I mean, it's from back at day one when I first started recording on Unlimited Blade Works. I had heard the title Fate Zero before, but that was about it. And now at this point, I have learned so much lore about the Fate universe from the script adaptation stuff and delving into the Type Moon wiki and kind of just doing a deep dig on, wait, what are they talking about in this moment? Oh, it's a reference to this thing that happened 1,000 years ago that only the diehard fans are going to get, but I need to make sure that I stay true to that in this moment with the script adaptation. So I had a lot of fun delving into that lore and getting to tell that story. But I mean, in terms of all those other series, it's most of it is not stuff that I knew anything about before I walked in on the day, and being part of stuff that I know is important to people that are watching it. I love getting the chance to go out to conventions and have people come up and bring their fan art and stuff like that they want to show off, and it's really cool getting to see stuff from a variety of the projects that I've worked on. It's not all Nier and it's not all Mob Psycho. There's a whole lot of people bringing up stuff from Seven Deadly Sins, which was, well, now at this point I've gotten to reprise Helbram a couple times because he keeps dying over and over again. But at first it was one short little 2-hour session or something like that, and somehow that character still resonates with people, and I think it's really cool that it doesn't. I don't know. You never know what people are going to key in on in terms of what's special, because there's also been projects that I've worked on for hours and hours and hours and hours and weeks and months sometimes that just doesn't hit with the populace for whatever reason, which is, that's not why we do what we do. We don't do it for the appreciation, but it's cool it's certainly a cool little perk to be able to go out and meet people and see what some of this stuff means to them.
Absolutely, that is fantastic. And it's funny that you mentioned about, of course, like having a lot of fans come up to you for like for other roles apart from the ones that people most associate you with as an actor. Have fans ever approached you recognizing you from roles that you like? Because what was like the biggest response or reaction that you got from a fan who recognized you from roles that you didn't expect to be recognized from?
I gotta think. I've had a couple people come up for A Lull in the Sea. I've had a few from. I'm trying to think of what the most obscure thing is that somebody's had me sign. I know I've had some stuff for One Punch Man, and I'm like, guys, I had 5 lines in this show or something like that. But it's such a massive show that it, people see that I'm in the cast and they want to try and collect them all. And then gosh, there was something. Some guy printed off some. I can't remember what the project was now, but I know there was a guy who printed off a picture on his, just like took a freeze frame image of something and just printed that off and brought it up to the autograph table. And I was like, where in the heck did you find this? Because it was something so obscure. But I cannot remember. I know that, honestly, at every convention that I go to, which who knows when I'm going to be able to go to one again, but or when I'm going to be willing to go to one again, for that matter, in this day and age. But I feel like every convention has at least one of those. Oh, cool! I haven't seen this before. Nobody's come up to my table to get me to sign something like this before. I've even had a couple people come up to talk about some of the audiobooks I've done, which is
Wow.
kind of staggeringly weird. Because going to anime conventions, especially, and I had a woman come up to, I think it was the last convention I went to. A woman came up to me and said, "Hey, I drove an hour to come and meet you because you narrated my favorite audiobook series." And I went, "What? Are you kidding? You came to an anime convention an hour away from where you live to talk about audiobooks for 5 minutes? Okay, cool."
Wow, that's absolutely crazy. And it's funny that you mentioned about that because there was a story that I think, and I've mentioned about the story quite a fair few times with a lot of the actors I've interviewed in the past, in that Alec Guinness, who to many fans out there will know is best known as Obi-Wan Kenobi from the original Star Wars series, in that he spoke about, or like when I think he used to go to conventions, he got incredibly frustrated with the fact that people mostly recognized him from Star Wars, but not a lot of the other roles that he's done in the past. Has that ever happened to you before? Like where you ever felt frustrated with people recognizing you for just that one role?
No, I mean I understand that people like what they like, and I'm appreciative of the fact that anybody recognizes me for anything. Honestly, I could totally understand Alec Guinness's frustration because he had a very storied acting career that had a whole bunch of really prestigious, really deep stuff, and I know that the sci-fi universe of Star Wars was really not his cup of tea as a fan. But the fact that he was a part of it and touched a whole lot of lives, like, that's where that comes from, I think. But I haven't experienced that personally. but I think it's just because I'm not on that kind of level. Yeah, I mean, the closest thing I have to relate to on that front would be 9S and Nier Automata, because that's the thing that I get the vast, probably more than any other project combined. People come up to talk to me about that, but I certainly don't get tired of it, because it was so special to me being able to be part of that and work on that, I'm always happy to see somebody who appreciates that work. Maybe that story would be different if it was one of the projects that I didn't care so passionately about that everybody knew me for. I don't know.
Right, fantastic. Now, you've also played across in films and series, such as we've mentioned about before quite a fair few times, Your Lie in April and Blame. What was it like working on those projects?
Wow, those are wildly different things to put together. Your Lie in April was absolutely a dream. Being part of that led to my very first convention appearance, and it was that the story of Your Lie in April is absolutely gorgeous. It's gut wrenching. It was kind of my wife now. Was she my fiance yet? I don't think she was no, she wasn't my fiance yet when we were recording it. Because I remember very distinctly a very emotional evening going to watch a screening of the first 11 episodes with the rest of the cast, which doesn't happen very often, but they did one. And honestly, we weren't planning on sitting there and watching all 11 episodes. It was supposed to be just, we're going to watch 3 or 4, and then we ended up staying, and I think we started at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and we were there until midnight, because we all just didn't want to stop. But I remember having a very emotional moment as I was leaving, kind of just recognizing, after sitting through watching those 10 or 11 episodes of something so beautiful that I got to be a part of, and then thinking about at that moment in time, I was also planning to propose to Caitlin. I think 2 nights later or something like that, and we were in the middle of house hunting to buy the house that we now live in. Or no, I think we were just about to put an offer in on the house. So I remember going back to my car after the screening and just having this wave of positive emotion overflowing me. Like, I get to work doing something so beautiful, and I'm going to get married, and we're going to live in that house, and everything is so great right now. And so it just kind of washed over me, and yeah. Anyway, that was a diatribe. But point being, so when Your Lie in April came out, I showed it to Caitlin, who at the time, she's also a voice actor and most known for her role as Feniko in Agretzko. I think is probably her biggest feather in her cap, but at least so far. But or at least as far as the fans know. But at the time, she was still focusing her career pretty much exclusively on being on stage and being on camera, and Your Lie in April was kind of her introduction as a viewer to anime, and she loved it so much that we ended up using some of the music in our wedding ceremony.
Wow.
So that was something pretty special. Blame, since you mentioned that one too, or Blame, I think is the I was told that was the pronunciation like 7 months after it had already come out. I think by a fan, I don't remember, but I think it's supposed to be The Sound of a Gun is the name of the title, but
okay.
Blame, I don't know, instead of it should have just been Blam, I think. But Blame, anyway, That was a strange experience. I was the title character, or not the title character, but I was the lead quote unquote character in that movie, and I think I had maybe 12 lines throughout the whole thing. He's such a silent protagonist, and it's such a very different character for me, because I tend to play, most of the time, I tend to play younger, kind of guy next door sounding characters, people that sound kind of like my natural voice for the most part, and Blame, my character in that, sounds very brooding and kind of tough, and it's not something that I get to do very often, so it's just a little different.
Right. Fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. Now, talking about, of course, with the video game universe, as mentioned about before, you played in the Automata series as 9S, but you also played across in series such as and I apologize if I mispronounced the title for this one, Disgaea 5 as Zeroken.
Disgaea, yeah.
Disgaea, that's right, Disgaea. Disgaea as Zeroken, the Fire Emblem series, and Harry Potter Wizards Unite. What was it like playing across those series?
Oh, I mean, Nier was life-changing. That's that if Durarara springboarded my career to one level, Nier absolutely lifted me up to another one. I think it was also it was a dream to be able to be a part of that, because the story is so good, and the character arc that 9S goes through is absolutely gut-wrenching, and to be able to play such a variety of emotions, to ride that roller coaster, it's not something that happens very often. You don't get the opportunity to play a character that goes on that kind of a journey. So that one was really, really special. In terms of the other ones that you mentioned there, Disgaea 5 was so long ago. I don't even remember much about the recording process for that one. I know it wasn't. I don't think it was a whole lot of time spent in the booth, and I don't think I had a whole lot of context, unfortunately. But I know that there are fans who appreciate it nonetheless. The Fire Emblem series was pretty cool. I know I've told this story in a couple places, and I probably should never have told it publicly, but I've already done it, so what's the point in keeping it a secret now? When auditions started coming around for what I believe is now Fire Emblem Heroes, I read for Roy, who I knew because of Super Smash Brothers. I was not really familiar with the Fire Emblem series, but I was familiar with Super Smash Brothers, and I was told, it was actually in the middle of recording for Nier Automata, because it was recorded at the same studio, and I was told by somebody who worked there that I had booked the role of Roy. And I got really excited because I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be a Smash Brother. That's so cool." And then time passed, and I think I saw some other actor friend post a picture in the studio with the director that I knew was directing the project, just from having talked to them at some point. So I sent a text to the studio, or an email, I think, to the studio, and was like, "Hey, just checking. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything, like nothing got filtered into spam or something about a booking, because I'm totally available and I want to work and whatnot." And then they were very apologetic. They were like, "I'm so sorry. I misspoke. You had not been cast. It was actually, you were on a short list. It was down to you and one other actor, who turned out to be Ray Chase, ended up booking the role of Roy." Which I could not be happier. Ray and I go way back. We both went to USC together. So it's a smaller town than it seems to be sometimes. But I just, I was a little bit hurt over not booking the character that I thought I had booked, that I thought was going to be so big because he was going to be a Smash brother. I was going to play a Smash brother, and Ray finally is now. But that took years to get from Fire Emblem Heroes to Smash Brothers for him, for that character. But then the auditions came around for Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valentia, and I think I read for 4 different characters for that project, and I have no idea who they were because they were all under code names. But the studio was very apologetic to me about the whole Roy situation, and they were like, "I'm going to make sure that you're in this game somewhere." Which, now that I've played through the entire game, that wasn't a big promise because there are so many characters that there was plenty of room to put me somewhere. But I ended up getting lucky, and I booked the lead role as Alm, and I'm very grateful for that because Fire Emblem is such a big franchise, and to be part of that is really cool. And the love story between Alm and Celica is a lot of fun, and it's opened the door for repeat work within the series because of Fire Emblem Heroes and how big it is. Alm keeps coming back in some capacity. And then Harry Potter Wizards Unite you also asked about, and that one was pretty awesome. To be able to voice match Daniel Radcliffe, which I did not know was a trick that I had in my toolbox until the auditions came around.
Wow.
And it was one of those, honestly, I've done a little bit of voice matching in my career. It's not something I consider myself super skilled at, but it's something I've done a little bit of. And I've had quite a few auditions come through to try and voice match some celebrity or other for whatever reason. Oftentimes it's just they don't want to pay the celebrity massive amounts of money to come do this little mobile game like Harry Potter Wizards Unite. So it's or it's it's replacing one line of dialogue in some promo where the actor misspoke and said something that doesn't actually make sense and we have to change it or whatever. There's any number of reasons for doing voice matching. And I've done a whole bunch of auditions for them, and the vast majority of the time I will have to go listen to a little bit of reference of the actor and do my very best imitation of it, record it, play it back, and see if it's even anywhere close. Because sometimes I try it and I listen to it and I go, nope, that's not even worth sending in. And then I just go about my day and I throw up my hands and give up. And then there are also occasionally there are celebrities where I will listen back to what I've done and go, oh, wow, that's really close. I'm totally going to book this thing. And I send it in and I never hear anything. And then there are the ones that are like Harry Potter, where I will do my best, record it, listen back, and go, yeah, it's close, I guess. Sure, it's worth sending in. And then I end up booking those. So you never really know. But it was pretty cool being able to play a part in that franchise. I can't. It's a different experience because it's I can't claim that character as my own. Obviously, Harry Potter is Daniel Radcliffe. It's not me. But it's cool to be able to have dipped my toes into the waters of the Harry Potter universe because it was such a big part of my childhood.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And with the success of Detective Pikachu and Sonic the Hedgehog breaking the video game film curse, what's one video game that you've worked on would you want to see adapted for live action?
Nier Automata. That's an easy one. I don't know how well it would work because Yoko Taro is so good at telling stories within the medium of video games and making use of the video game non-linear version of storytelling. I don't know how well it would translate to film, but that I think I think it could, because he's a genius storyteller. He's crafted some really good stories in the Drakenir universe, and I I will I've become such a big fan now that I will eat it up no matter what it is.
Fantastic. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned about that because I know for a fact that I think it was after they had done Sonic the Hedgehog that it was announced that I think it was Sony, I believe it was, or I think it was the developers from The Last of Us that announced they were developing a live action Last of Us TV series, and that the original creator I think is involved in the series in a huge capacity in some ways. So it's totally possible we may see Automa, sorry, excuse me, as a live action TV series. So if they can manage to get the creator for Last of Us involved in this live action adaptation of the game, it's totally possible they can do the same for 9S and Automata.
Yeah, who knows?
Absolutely, that would be so fantastic. And and of course, like with a lot of anime, we've seen like a lot of revivals and reboots of a lot of really classic anime over the years, from Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood to Fruits Basket, and also to Berserk. If you wanted to do a revival or reboot of one show you've worked on, what would you want that show to be?
Um, hmm, a revival or a reboot of something that I've worked on. Gosh, I've been pretty happy with the way things went the first time around for most of them. Um, you know what? I would like to see Granblue Fantasy the animation come back. I had the chance to play through the story mode of Granblue Fantasy Versus, which was the video game, well, the latest video game. That's kind of a weird tangent, but Granblue Fantasy Online was a mobile game that never actually got a U.S. release, but you could play it through your web browser or something, um, in subtitled English. I think it never got an English dub. But then they did an anime of the first little chunk of the story from that online game. So it was an adaptation from game to anime, and that anime got a dub that in which I played the title character Gran. And then just recently, a new video game came out, a fighting game based on that universe. I think set chronologically way after the events of the anime, but somewhere in the middle of the original mobile game. Anyway, after getting to play through that the fighting game story and see what all those characters could be, I was like, man, I would love to be able to take another crack at the anime, or at least get a chance to do season 2, because I know they've done a season 2 of that show in Japan, but it hasn't been dubbed yet.
Fantastic. That would be so fantastic. And where do you hope to see yourself with regards to acting in the long run?
I want to keep doing more of what I've been doing. I've I feel like I'm right where I want to be. I wouldn't mind booking some big huge national commercial campaign that could pay off my house and stuff like that. But in terms of the creative fulfillment, I feel pretty good about where I'm at. I just want to keep on booking more of the kind of stuff that I've been getting to do lately. Working on some more original cartoons and some more big name video games and stuff like that. Those are what I live for. So more of that, I'm happy.
Fantastic. And a bit of a funny question here with this one is, what two shows have you worked on would you want to see a crossover between?
Crossover between. Let me think. Oh, I'd probably like to see Mob plopped in somewhere that doesn't make sense because he's so much fun. Uh, hmm. I I need to look at my list of stuff. I'm looking at the list that you had in your opening spiel. Maybe Mob and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. That'd be a little ridiculous. JoJo's already so outrageous. I feel like actually Mob would probably fit in fairly well there. He's way too overpowered. He would destroy all of those stands, but that'd be fun.
Fantastic. That would be so epic if they did a crossover on that. That would be so fantastic. And to any listeners out there who'll be listening to this once this interview is up, contact the people who are responsible for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and Mob Psycho and say we want a crossover. That's what we really want, because that would be so epic. That would be so fantastic. And across your entire career, what would you say has been like the one role that resonates with you the most?
I can't pick just one. I can't pick a favorite child. That's impossible. We've listed several today, and I can't narrow it down any more than that. Because 9S and Mob and Aoba and Mikazuki and Shinji and Alm and Watari from Your Lie in April, all of these characters are special to me. I can't pick just one.
That's no problem. That is fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And without getting into any spoilers, what's next for Kyle McCarley for the fans to know about?
I don't know what kind of spoiler-free... You know what? I can go to the same answer that I've been able to give for the last year and change now. Actually, gosh, we're coming up on 2 years in August since we announced the cast for Mr. Osomatsu, the dub. It's coming someday, somewhere. I don't know when you'll be able to see it. We have been working on it a lot lately. And I don't know what the distribution plan is. I don't know if the virus has had some sort of an impact on that distribution plan, but I know we keep on working on it, so I know it's got to end up somewhere at some point. The show is hysterical, and I hope you enjoy it when you see it. I play Ichimatsu, and it's great.
Fantastic. That is so fantastic. And final question, what do you think 9S would say if he was in Australia?
I don't know. I've never been to Australia. I don't know something about... There's probably not a lot of kangaroos hopping around Melbourne. So, I don't... The places that he would go... G2B, everything looks like it's on fire here. Maybe we should help.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. Kyle McCarley, thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And that's no problem at all. And is there anything you would like to say to the fans out there in Australia and in the world?
You can catch me on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Kyle McCarley. I'm streaming, I stream video games that I play a part in on Saturdays at noon Pacific time. I have no idea what time that is in Australia. But right now I'm playing through Drakengard 3, which is the prequel to Nier Automata. And then I also play some board games with some buddies of mine on a show we call the Board and Barrel Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific time, twitch.tv/Kyle McCarley.
That's absolutely fantastic. Well, guys, if you'd like to find out more about Kyle McCarley, you can check out the links which I will put to in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to HannaTalk. Follow me on both Facebook and Twitter. Check out the links below, and also be sure to comment below as well. Thank you all so much for listening. This is Simon and Kyle McCarley signing off. Bye for now.
Thanks for having me.